She was sold like an animal, but he treated her like a queen. Wild West love stories in 7 looked bigger than it should, like the sky was trying to press the whole desert flat. Heat shimmered above the steel walkways. Wind pushed sand through every crack, carrying the smell of fuel, animals, and old metal. People said Red Mesa was a trade town, but it was really a place where the strong took what they wanted and called it business. Ranchers brought synthetic grain and water filters. Prospectors sold rare minerals from the dry canyons. Drifters came for work and left with bruises, debts, or nothing at all. On market day, the crowd grew thick enough to hide trouble. Ryland Cade rode in at noon, his boots dusty, his coat faded from too many suns. His horse was not a real animal, but a biomech mount, quiet, tough, and built for the long, open stretches outside the station lights. The mount's eyes glowed soft in the shade, and its joints moved smooth like a living thing. Ryland had named it Copper because it never complained and never ran. Ryland did not like Red Mesa. He came because he had to. His ranch was far out past the salt flats, where the land was empty and the sky felt honest. But the water condenser on his property needed a new core. Without it, his cattle drones would fail, his crops would dry, and his winter stores would shrink to nothing. The only place to buy parts without a month-long wait was Red Mesa Station. He tied Copper near a post, paid a small docking fee, and kept his hand close to his belt out of habit. He didn't wear a flashy pistol, only a compact coil revolver. It wasn't for show, it was for leaving alive. He walked past food stalls and tool carts, ignoring the loud calls. People bargained in, sharp voices. A fight broke out near the fuel tanks, and no one stepped in until it was over. A child chased a small drone bird through the dust. Somewhere a band played a broken old tune, half country, half static. Ryland found the parts merchant he trusted, an older man with a metal jaw and careful eyes. "Cade," the merchant said, scanning Ryland's face like he was counting the days since they last met. "Your condenser core again?" "It's dying," Ryland replied. "Need a clean one this time," the merchant snorted. "Clean costs extra." Ryland slid a pouch of credits across the counter. "Then charge me extra." The merchant checked the credits, then disappeared behind a curtain and returned with a sealed case. "Last one in stock." Ryland took it, weighed it in his hands.
"Real value."
"Anything else?" the merchant asked. Ryland almost said no. He almost left right then. That was when the crowd shifted like a wave, and a new sound rose above the market noise, a short blast of a horn, followed by cheers and mocking laughter. Ryland's shoulders tightened. He turned and saw people moving toward the far end of the station, toward the old loading platform that was used for public announcements and executions of rules, depending on who was in power that week. Ryland told himself it was none of his business. He took 2 steps away. Then he heard a voice, high, nervous, trying to sound official. All right. Make room! This is a lawful claim under station code." Ryland stopped. Lawful claim? Station code. Those words were often used to dress up something ugly. He didn't want to look. Looking meant caring. Caring meant staying. Still, his feet carried him closer. The loading platform had been cleared. A man in a gray vest stood there with a datapad, sweaty and proud. 2 guards leaned on the railing like this was entertainment. A few station drones hovered overhead, recording everything. And in the center of it all stood a young woman. Her hands were bound with a restraint band that glowed faint blue. It wasn't tight enough to cut her skin, but it was meant to remind everyone she was not in control. Her clothes were simple. Work pants, a worn shirt, a scarf wrapped around her neck to block the dust. Her hair was dark and tied back, but loose strands stuck to her face from heat and wind. What struck Ryland was not fear. It was the way she stood. Her chin was lifted. Her eyes moved across the crowd with calm, like she was memorizing faces. She did not beg. She did not cry. She looked tired, yes, but she looked unbroken. The man with the datapad raised his voice. "This here is Leora Venn. Debt bond claim, signed and verified." Her sponsor defaulted. Station law says the claim transfers to the creditor. That's how it works. Some people booed. Some clapped.
Ryland felt his jaw tighten.
Debt bond. That was the clean word. It meant someone's future had been tied to someone else's money. It was supposed to be regulated. It was supposed to be humane. Red Mesa didn't do humane, the broker continued. Now, she's a skilled hand. Farm work, repair work, general labor, strong back, steady head. A year of service buys her freedom. A year, folks! A year, someone yelled. More like forever. crowd laughed again. Leora's eyes flicked toward the voice. She didn't react, not outwardly. But Ryland noticed the small change in her breathing, like she was holding something down inside her. A buyer in a red jacket called out, "What's the starting price?" The broker grinned. 500 credits? Fair price, considering the paperwork. Ryland's stomach turned. This wasn't just trade. It was a public humiliation. A show. A warning to anyone who fell behind. Ryland told himself to leave. He could leave. He should leave. But then he saw the guards. One of them was hookup ready, meaning he could connect his wrist device to that restraint band, tighten it, command it. His eyes lingered on Leora like she was a prize. Ryland felt something cold and sharp rise in him. Not anger exactly. Something older. A memory of a night long ago when his own family had been pushed around by men who smiled while doing it. He had promised himself back then that he would never be one of the ones who looked away. The bidding started fast. 600. 8. Leora's gaze stayed forward, but her hands clenched once around the band, as if reminding herself she was still there, still real. Ryland's fingers brushed the edge of his credit pouch. He had enough for the core. Enough for supplies. He did not have enough to be a hero. Heroes died on Red Mesa. Then another voice rose, sharp, confident. 1,000. The crowd went quiet for a moment, then turned to see who had spoken. A tall man with polished boots stepped forward. He wore a coat with bright stitching and a badge that wasn't official but pretended to be. One of the station's big men. The kind who collected debts for sport. The broker's eyes lit up. 1,000. Do I hear more? Ryland's pulse thudded in his ears. Leora's expression did not change, but her eyes flicked toward that man, and for the first time something like fear crossed her face, quick and controlled, like a shadow moving across the sand. Ryland understood then. She wasn't afraid of work. She was afraid of him. The broker called, "Any other bids?" "Going once, 2,000. The words came out steady, almost calm. Whispers spread. People stared at Ryland's plain coat, his dust-stained boots, his quiet face. The broker blinked. 2,000. "Sir, do you confirm?" Ryland pulled out his credit seal and held it up. "Confirmed." Ryland didn't answer him. He kept his eyes on the broker. "Is this lawful, or is it theater? Because if it's lawful, then finish it." He liked money, but he didn't like trouble between armed men. 2,000 going once? Going twice. The man in the bright coat's jaw worked. He could bid higher. But pride wasn't worth everything, and the crowd's attention had shifted. He raised one hand like he might speak, then lowered it. "Sold!" the broker shouted quickly, almost too quickly. "To Mr. Cade," Ryland said. Ryland Cade. The broker tapped his datapad, finalized the transfer, and the restraint band flashed once, then dimmed. The guard with the hookup-ready device sighed like he'd lost a toy. Ryland walked up the steps to the platform. He kept his hands visible. He didn't want anyone thinking he was here to start a fight. He reached Leora and stopped at a respectful distance. Her eyes met his. Up close he saw dust on her lashes and a small cut on her cheek, already healing. Her gaze was sharp, intelligent.
Watching for lies.
Ryland spoke quietly so only she could hear. "I'm not taking you anywhere you don't want to go." Her brow tightened. "Then why did you buy the claim?" "I didn't buy you," he said. "I bought the paper." She stared at him like she didn't know how to place those words in her world. "Release her." The broker hesitated. "Station code says..." Ryland's voice stayed even. "I paid. The claim is mine. I'm ending it now." The broker swallowed again and tapped his pad. The restraint band clicked open and fell away from Leora's wrists. For a second she didn't move. It looked like her body had forgotten what freedom felt like. Then she flexed her hand slowly, as if testing the air. The crowd murmured, disappointed. They had wanted a show. They had wanted cruelty. This was not as fun. Ryland stepped down and held out a canteen. "Water, if you want it." Leora took it, careful. She drank, not too fast, eyes still on him the whole time. Ryland nodded toward Copper tied nearby. "I'm leaving town. You can walk away right now and no one will stop you. If you want a safer ride out, you can come with me until you find somewhere you trust." Leora looked past him at the crowd, at the guards, at the man in the bright coat who watched with anger in his eyes. She looked back at Ryland. "You don't know what you just stepped into," she said softly. "I know enough," Ryland replied. "And I don't like it." She hesitated, then took a step closer. Not toward him, but toward the open space beside him, like she was choosing a direction. "All right," she said. "I'll ride. For now." Rylan untied Copper and adjusted the saddle settings for two. He didn't touch Leora. He simply made room. As they moved through the market, people watched in confused silence. The crowd had expected ownership. Instead, they saw something unfamiliar. Respect. But Red Mesa did not forgive easily. Rylan felt it in the air like a storm building behind the sun. The man in the bright-stitched coat lifted his wrist device and spoke into it, low and angry. Rylan didn't hear the words, but he didn't need to. Trouble had a sound. Copper's metal hooves moved softly across the dry ground as Red Mesa Station disappeared behind them. The noise of the market faded, replaced by wide silence. The desert planet stretched in every direction, endless dunes broken by sharp rocks and long shadows. The sky slowly turned orange as the sun began to sink. Rylan rode in front, guiding Copper with small movements of his hands. Leora sat behind him, keeping a careful distance even though the saddle was built for two riders. She held onto the side grip instead of him. It was clear she was still unsure. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Rylan was not a man who liked too many words, and Leora seemed to be measuring him quietly, watching how he moved, how he treated the mount, how he reacted to sounds around them. Trust did not come easily to her. That much was obvious. After an hour, Rylan slowed Copper near a rocky ridge. "We rest here," he said simply. He dismounted first and stepped back, giving her space to climb down on her own. She landed lightly, steady despite the long ride. He noticed she moved like someone used to hard work, not weakness. He opened a small pack and handed her a food bar. "It's basic," he said, "but it'll keep you going." She accepted it with a small nod. "Thank you." Her voice was calm, but he sensed she wasn't used to saying those words often. They sat a few feet apart on a flat rock. The wind picked up slightly, lifting dust into the air like thin smoke. After a while, she spoke. "You really said I was free back there?" she said. "Yes." "And you meant it." "Yes." She studied him again, as if searching for the hidden price behind his kindness. "People don't spend 2,000 credits for nothing," she said. Rylan shrugged. "Sometimes they do." She let out a soft breath, almost a laugh, but not quite. "I don't understand you," she said. "That's all right," he replied. "I don't understand most people either." That seemed to relax her a little. They finished eating, and when the sky darkened fully, Rylan activated a small camp light. It glowed warm against the cold night. The desert was different after sunset. Strange sounds echoed far away. Mechanical birds, distant engines, and the low hum of automated towers scanning the horizon. Leora wrapped her arms around herself against the cool air. "You don't have to tell me your story," Rylan said quietly. "Not unless you want to." "They said it was a partnership," she finally said. "A farm contract. Work together, share profits." Her voice stayed steady, but her eyes hardened. "He borrowed money. More than we could repay. When the harvest failed, he ran. Left me with the debt." "The traders came," she continued. "They said station law allowed them to claim labor instead of payment. I thought it would be fair work, but they wanted control, not work." She stopped talking there, and Rylan did not push further. "I'm sorry," he said simply. She nodded once, accepting the words but not asking for sympathy. They slept in turns that night. Rylan took first watch, scanning the horizon through a small handheld device. He noticed two faint signals far away, moving slowly in the direction of Red Mesa. Probably travelers. Maybe not. By morning they were moving again. The land changed as they traveled. The smooth dunes turned into cracked plains where old machines rusted under the sun. Towers from an ancient mining operation stood like skeletons. Small herds of bioengineered cattle moved in the distance, guided by floating drones. "This is ranch land," Rylan said. "You live alone out here?" she asked. "Yes." "Peace." She seemed to understand that answer. When they finally reached his ranch near midday, Leora slowed her steps. The place was simple but strong, a wide metal house built into a rocky hill, solar panels stretching across the ground, fences marking large grazing areas. Small maintenance drones moved around quietly, repairing posts and scanning animals. "This is yours?" she asked. "Yes." Maybe she expected something smaller. Maybe she expected a lonely man to live in worse conditions. Rylan led her inside. The interior was clean but plain. Tools hung neatly on walls. A cooking station stood in one corner. 2 spare rooms line the hallway. He placed the condenser core on a table. You can take the room at the end, he said. Fresh clothes are in the storage bin. You don't have to work or stay if you don't want. You're not setting rules? She asked. One rule, he said. Honesty. She nodded slowly. Over the next few days, a quiet routine formed.
Leora watched how the ranch worked. She helped without being asked, fixing small machines, organizing supplies, feeding animals.
She moved with confidence, proving she was capable and strong. Ryland noticed she smiled more when she worked outdoors. One evening, as they repaired a fence together, she said, "You treat everything with care, even machines." They work better that way, he said. And people? People too. She looked at him for a moment longer than usual, then returned to tightening a bolt. Their conversations remained simple but meaningful. She learned he had lost his family years ago during a raid by bandits. He learned she had once dreamed of owning her own farm. Days passed peacefully, until the warning came. An old hover truck approached the ranch one afternoon. Ryland stepped outside, hand resting near his belt. A gray-haired woman climbed down from the vehicle. She was a trader he trusted, Mara, known for speaking only when something mattered.
You picked up trouble in Red Mesa, she said, without greeting.
I guessed, Ryland replied. They're looking for her, Mara said, glancing toward Leora, who stood behind him. The men you embarrassed? They're not letting it go. Leora's shoulders tightened. They say you stole property, Mara continued. They're gathering people. Ryland nodded slowly, already thinking ahead. Thank you for telling me, he said. Mara looked at him carefully. You planning to run? Ryland glanced back at his ranch, the land he built, the animals, the quiet life he fought for. No, he said. Mara sighed. Then be ready. Silence settled over the ranch. Leora stepped forward. You should send me away, she said. This is my problem. They were trouble before you, they'll be trouble after. But they're coming because of me. She looked at him, searching his face for doubt. There was none. The wind picked up, carrying dust across the plains like a warning. And for the first time since leaving Red Mesa, Leora felt something new. Not fear, but the strange feeling of standing beside someone who would not step back. Trouble was coming. The wind carried fine dust across the ranch like a quiet warning. The sky looked clear, but something felt heavy in the air. Ryland stood near the fence line, scanning the horizon through a small scope. Nothing yet, only empty land stretching far into the distance. Behind him, Leora tightened the straps on a supply crate. She worked with calm focus, but her eyes often drifted toward the horizon. They will come soon, she said quietly. Yes, Ryland replied. There was no panic in his voice. Only certainty. He lowered the scope and walked toward the barn where several maintenance drones waited on charging racks. He adjusted their settings, programming simple patrol patterns. Small lights blinked as the drones activated. You prepared for this before? She asked. A long time ago, he said. Not recently. She nodded, understanding more than he explained. The ranch was peaceful by design, built for quiet work, not conflict. But Ryland believed in preparation. Fences were reinforced with energy wires. Motion sensors hid beneath rocks. A signal tower connected to nearby settlements in case help was needed. Leora watched him work, noticing how he moved without rushing. Every action was careful and measured. You're not afraid, she said. He paused, thinking.
I am. I just don't let fear decide for me.
She absorbed that silently. Later, as the sun lowered, they sat together on the porch steps. Copper rested nearby, its mechanical tail twitching occasionally. The animals moved calmly in their pens, unaware of danger. I have been running for a long time, Leora said after a while. Ryland waited. I thought survival meant avoiding fights, she continued. But sometimes running only makes people chase harder. Standing still can be dangerous, too. She looked at him. Why didn't you leave when Mara warned you? She studied his face, searching for deeper reasons. She saw something there. Not stubborn pride, but quiet loyalty. The ranch was more than land to him. It was memory, healing, purpose. Night came slowly. Stars filled the sky, bright and sharp. Ryland activated the outer lights, casting long shadows across the yard. He checked his coil revolver, then set it back on the table. He hoped not to use it. Leora stood beside him. I won't hide, she said. I know, he replied. They shared a small smile. Hours passed. Silence grew thick. Then a sensor beeped softly. Ryland turned instantly toward the panel. Red lights flashed across the map display. 3 vehicles, he said, approaching fast. Dust clouds appeared in the distance, illuminated by moonlight. The low hum of engines reached them moments later. The vehicle stopped just outside the ranch boundary. Men stepped out, shadows moving under the lights. At the center stood the man with the bright-stitched coat from Red Mesa. His smile looked sharp even from far away. Ryland walked forward slowly, stopping just inside the fence line. "This is private land," he called calmly. The man laughed. "You walked off with something that belongs to us." "She belongs to herself," Ryland said. The man's smile faded slightly. "You embarrassed me in front of the whole station," he said. "That was unwise." Leora stepped forward beside him, not behind. "Besides," her voice carried across the open ground. Some of the men shifted uncomfortably.
The leader ignored her words.
"Hand her over," he said. "And maybe we leave your ranch intact." Ryland felt anger rise, but kept his voice steady. "No." Silence stretched. The man sighed dramatically. "You really want trouble?" He lifted his wrist device. Immediately, several small drones rose from his vehicles, hovering near the fence. Their lights flickered, scanning for weaknesses. Ryland tapped a control pad. His own defense drones activated, flying up to meet the intruders. The air filled with quiet electronic tension. Leora watched carefully, then stepped closer to the control panel. "They're trying to override your sensors," she said quickly. "You know how to stop them?" Ryland asked. "Yes." He moved aside without hesitation. Her fingers moved fast across the controls. Lines of code flashed across the screen as she rerouted signals and blocked incoming commands. One by one, the enemy drones flickered and dropped low, their connection disrupted. Ryland glanced at her with quiet surprise. "You're good," he said. "I told you I worked farms," she replied. "Modern farms need tech skills." Outside, the man's confident expression turned into frustration. "Enough games," he shouted. "Take them!" His men moved forward, but as they crossed the boundary, the fence lights flashed bright. Energy currents surged, forcing them to stop. Ryland stepped forward again. "You don't want this," he said. The man laughed coldly. "You think I care about damage?" But something had changed. The attackers hesitated. They expected an easy target, a lonely rancher and a frightened woman. Instead, they faced calm resistance and strong defenses. Leora stood tall beside Ryland. For the first time, she felt different. Not like someone waiting to be rescued, but like someone choosing to fight for her own future. She stepped forward slightly. "You claim station law," she called. "Then let's follow law."
"You have no proof."
She smiled faintly. She activated a small device from her pocket, one she had quietly repaired earlier. A holographic display appeared, showing contract records. "You altered the claim," she said. "The debt transfer was illegal. The station logs prove it." Murmurs spread among the attackers. The leader's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" she replied calmly. Ryland felt a quiet pride watching her. She was no longer the silent figure on the platform. She stood strong, confident, and unafraid. A new sound filled the air. Distant engines approaching fast. Ryland looked up. 3 patrol ships from a nearby settlement descended toward the ranch, lights flashing. Mara's voice came through the comm system. "Thought you might need witnesses." The leader's smile vanished completely. He looked around, calculating. Without surprise or advantage, this situation had changed. "This isn't finished," he said sharply. He turned and ordered his men back into their vehicles. Within moments, they retreated into the darkness, engines roaring as they disappeared across the desert. Silence returned slowly. Leora let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Ryland looked at her. "You didn't have to stay," he said quietly. She shook her head. "I wanted to." They stood together under the stars, the ranch lights glowing around them. For the first time, Leora felt safe, not because someone saved her, but because she had chosen to stand and fight alongside someone who saw her as equal. And as the night deepened, both of them knew something had changed between them. Not just survival. The first light of dawn stretched across the desert, painting the ranch in soft oranges and golds. Dust floated in the air, and the mechanical animals stirred quietly in their pens. Silence rested over the land, but it was no longer tense. It was peaceful, a calm earned through effort, not luck. Ryland walked out of the house, Copper following behind. He checked the fences, making sure all the energy circuits and barriers were still running perfectly. Nothing had been damaged during the night. He allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. The ranch had survived its first serious test. Leora came out moments later, holding a cup of warm liquid from the stove. She offered it to him. "You need this more than I do," she said lightly. He took the cup with a quiet smile. "Thanks." They walked together along the fence line, side by side. For the first time, there were no threats, no pursuers. The only sound was the gentle hum of the mechanical animals and the whisper of the morning wind. "You know," Leora began slowly, "I never thought a man like you existed out here. Someone who treats a person with respect." Rylan glanced at her, measuring her words. "I don't always. But I try. She laughed softly, the sound blending with the early wind. It wasn't loud or careless, just honest. "It's rare. Makes a difference, though." They arrived at the water station, checking the condenser core Rylan had purchased in Red Mesa. He examined it carefully and installed it while Leora watched and learned. Her hands moved skillfully, guiding tools and tightening bolts where needed. He noticed how quickly she adapted to the ranch's systems, how capable she was at reading the machine's signals. "You could run your own place," Rylan said quietly. She paused, looking up at him. "Maybe, but I like this one."
It didn't respond.
Words weren't necessary yet. Action spoke louder, and she had already proven herself through her courage and skill. As the day went on, they worked side by side, repairing fences, tending the mechanical livestock, checking the sensors. Rylan was careful not to overwhelm her. He let her make decisions, showing trust in her abilities. Leora's confidence grew with each task, her posture more relaxed, her movements quicker and more precise. By midday, the sun had reached its peak. Dust shimmered on the horizon, hinting at movement. Rylan paused, eyes narrowing. He had taught himself to read the land, the winds, and the distant shadows. Leora noticed his stillness. "More trouble?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "Not yet, but I'll be ready if it comes." She gave him a small smile. "You're always ready." Then, Rylan led her to a small area behind the house, a spot he had built for quiet reflection. A bench faced the desert expanse, with the twin moons faintly visible in the sky, even as daylight lingered. "Sit," he said, gesturing. She obeyed, perching carefully on the edge. He stood beside her, silent for a long moment. The ranch, the plains, the mechanical animals, it was all theirs now if they chose to claim it. "You've changed me," Leora said suddenly. He glanced at her. "How?" "I used to think survival meant following rules, hiding, running. I never thought I could stand and fight, let alone trust someone." He nodded slowly. "People change when they see someone who treats them like they matter." Her eyes met his. There was something unspoken there, an understanding, a bond formed not by words, but by shared struggle. She had seen danger, faced it, and stood strong beside him. That courage demanded respect. For the next few days, they built a routine together. Leora repaired small equipment, organized the ranch storage, and helped plan trade routes with distant settlements. She learned quickly, but Rylan let her make mistakes and learn from them without interference. At night, they often sat together under the stars. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they did not. Words were unnecessary when the connection was already clear. They shared quiet meals, laughed at small mistakes, and supported each other through long hours of work. One evening, as they repaired a solar panel array, Leora paused, watching the sky. "Do you ever get lonely out here?" she asked. Rylan adjusted the panel's angle. "Sometimes, but I choose it. I like the quiet. It gives me time to think." "You don't seem lonely now," she said, her gaze lingering on him. He didn't respond. The truth was simple. He had never shared this land with anyone. Now, having someone who could match his pace and understand his world made it feel less empty. Weeks passed. The ranch became more secure, better organized, and almost alive with their combined efforts. The mechanical livestock roamed calmly. The sensors worked without error, and the fences held firm. Life was hard but stable. Then came the day she decided to test her freedom. Leora walked to the edge of the property where the desert opened wide. "I could leave," she said quietly, "and find a place of my own. I don't have to stay."
Rylan joined her, standing silently as she looked over the vast expanse.
"You don't have to stay," he said. "If you choose to leave, I won't stop you." She turned to him, eyes searching. "But I don't want to. Not anymore. I've learned I can trust you, and I want to build something here. not just survive. He felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. "Then stay," he said simply. She smiled, relief softening her features. "I will." The following weeks showed their partnership in full strength. Leora began to lead small trade caravans, negotiating with distant settlements, while Rylan focused on ranch maintenance and security. They worked together seamlessly, a silent understanding guiding their decisions. One night as they sat on the porch steps, Rylan finally spoke in a way he rarely did. "I never thought I'd have someone here, someone I could rely on." Leora leaned back, letting the wind brush against her face. "You had me all along. I just didn't know it." He chuckled softly, a sound that surprised even him. "I'm not used to words like that." "I don't need them," she said. "I have actions, and your actions have always spoken louder." The desert stretched around them, peaceful and still. The troubles from Red Mesa felt distant, though the memory remained. They had faced danger together, and had survived not just because of skill, but because of trust and respect. Months passed. The ranch grew more productive. The community of mechanical livestock and drones thrived under their care. Leora's confidence transformed her presence. She was no longer a person defined by her past, but a partner in every sense. Rylan noticed small changes in himself, too. He smiled more easily. He laughed when Leora joked. He found joy in routine work and, more importantly, in shared life. One evening, Leora suggested planting a small garden near the house. It was simple, just vegetables and herbs, but it was symbolic. They worked together in the soil, hands dirty, side by side. When they finished, they stepped back, surveying their efforts. "It's ours," she said softly. "Yes," he replied. "Everything here is ours now." They stood together as the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the desert. The ranch, their partnership, and their trust had all grown stronger through danger and effort. Leora turned to Rylan, a small smile forming. "I've never felt this safe before. And I never thought I could be happy after everything." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You deserve it. Both the safety and the happiness." She looked up at him, eyes bright. "Then I choose to stay. Here." Rylan nodded, letting the weight of the words settle. No grand declarations were needed. Their life together was already built, through actions, through trust, and through shared moments. As they watched the sunrise over the desert plains, Leora and Rylan stood side by side. The harsh world beyond the ranch boundaries might still be dangerous, but inside their small slice of land they had found something rare: peace, respect, and love. The woman once treated as property now held her own destiny firmly. The cowboy who had lived alone for years finally had a partner he could trust completely. Together they faced the future with confidence, knowing that no storm could break them as long as they stood together. And so, life on the ranch continued. Hard work, shared laughter, quiet nights under the stars, and a bond that had been forged in dust, danger, and trust. The past would never be forgotten, but it no longer defined them. They had created their own world, one built on respect, courage, and choice. The sun climbed higher, warming the desert and the ranch. The air smelled of dust, earth, and promise. Copper wandered nearby, watching the two with quiet awareness. Rylan and Leora moved together toward the morning work, ready to face whatever challenges might come. Not because they had to survive, but because they had chosen to live, and to live together.